Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Home Tech Podcast. Jason Griffin here. So happy to have you with us. Joined as always by my partner Seth Johnson. Seth, how's it going?
Good, man. I'm a little confused right now, though.
Yeah, I know. You and I were talking about this, and I think we're going to have to source this one out to the audience.
Yeah. So there's some big news today that Google has included podcasts on Google Play. The biggest problem with it is that Jason and I don't use any Android devices, and we have no idea if we're on there or not. So please, if somebody is using Google Play and they can tell us if we're on the Google Play Store. I submitted the link like months ago, and it said it was submitted and all approved and everything. So
yeah, they kind of went dark on us.
Yeah, for all I know, it's been on there and people have been using it, and I don't know. It's such a strange thing, but I'm glad we're on there if we're on there.
Yeah, it's like Google Plus, one of those things. I could just never quite figure that out as hard as I tried, but let us know. I'm definitely very curious, and can't hurt, right? Be listed on another podcast directory. Definitely not a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, I got a link that said like, go check this link out, and I have so many Google accounts, like it never worked. So please tell us if we're on there. It'll be so helpful.
All right, so we're officially putting that one out to the audience. So let us know at HomeTech Podcast on Twitter, or shoot us an email over through the website HomeTech.fm/feedback. But let's jump into it, Seth. We've got another, I think, great show here. I'm excited to share it with our audience. We had Joey Kolchinsky on. Now, if anyone is listening, that name might sound familiar. We had Joey on actually back in November of last year, episode 87, if you want to go back and check that out, HomeTech.fm/87. And Joey's with OneVision, and they've got a new initiative going on. And so really, without getting too into the details here, he started kind of in the IT world and eventually sort of morphed into doing smart home and integration, and really had a very unique business model, very focused on service. And now he's expanded that business model out and has basically shifted, I should say, would be more accurate, and now has basically become a B2B outfit offering these sort of services and first-level tech support and triage to other integrators. So a great offering, and definitely look forward to sharing that with our audience. So be sure to stay tuned for that. As usual, we're going to jump into a few news stories here before we get into our interview with Joey. And the first one we wanted to touch on, and Seth, I promised you before the show that we would hit this one quick, because we've started to become the Nest soap opera show here, but I did want to touch on a piece that came out, and it looked like Tony Fadell was kind of in damage control mode. He's the CEO at Nest, if you're not familiar, and Recode had a story about him going to one of their all-hands meetings and addressing the team at Google and letting them know that, in his opinion, things were really just fine, and that all of this bad press that we've been hearing really isn't justified. And I read the whole story. They had a transcript of it, and one of the things I thought was really funny is that there was a quote in there where Tony Fadell talked about Nest and how they've actually been launching products, and I'm quoting here, very, very fast.
So fast. It's so fast we didn't really notice that,
Yeah. Right. Right.
Right.
I put this up on Twitter and wanted to give a quick tweet shout out to Walter Kolchinsky, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. It's at Walter Kolchinsky, and he replied to that tweet and said, well, maybe fast if you compare it to HomeKit, which I thought was a fair point.
You got to have a good baseline.
It's all relative.
Exactly. Good stuff.
So anyways, Nest still struggling. Things have quieted down a little bit there, but it's definitely been a rough month for them.
Well, and speaking of rough months, SmartThings is still going crazy. We talked a little bit about this in the past, that they were having some server problems and instability, I guess is what they were saying. This all culminated, and I think it's still going on. I know they released a press release saying, hey, we hear you. We know this is going on. We're trying to move everybody over to our new servers or new services. We're going to mitigate this problem. But what I thought was amazing, and I posted, let's see, this was April 14th, so a couple days ago. But there's a search that you can go through on the community SmartThings, and we'll just post a link to this. And it's basically a search for withdrawn. And what was going on where the third-party developers were withdrawing support for the applications that they had written for SmartThings and pulling them off of the site. So, let me just go through this. Denon Network AV receivers, Circadian Daylight, SmartThings plus Philips Hue, like some really cool projects, Space Weather. The biggest one was Rule Machine, which is basically if this the nat type functionality for SmartThings. This guy pulled it off and kind of put an interesting letter on there saying, basically, I'm getting too many support calls or too many people emailing me about this, and it's there's some serious degradation here, and there's nothing SmartThings seems to be doing. So he pulled Rule Machine off, which I know a lot of people were upset about because it basically removed a ton of functionality that they had from the system, and basically returns it to being what they got out of the box, which right now isn't much.
Wow. Yeah. These search results are definitely interesting. I'm scrolling through them as you talk, and some of these do go back, in fairness, to I'm looking at one April 2015, October 2015. So some of these are a little bit older, but if you scan through them, you will see a very clear pattern of frustration. And this is something that we've been talking about recently, and really it's been a pattern that we're starting to see in the DIY smart home, where just a lot of the bigger companies have stalled out. We haven't seen much from Apple. We just talked about all the drama at Nest. SmartThings appears to be growing this base of frustration with the third-party developers. And that's obviously a very critical part of SmartThings' promise, right? I mean, they're very built on this idea of having that third-party development and plugins and an active community of developers. And if your developers are revolting and pulling things out because they don't feel like their efforts are warranted, or maybe that they're getting the support from SmartThings that they feel like they need, I think that's a pretty indicative sign. Yeah,
those are the raving fans. Like, it's a little book that's out there. I forget who wrote it, but those are the people who would love to see the product succeed. And if they're that frustrated, there's a serious problem going on with the system right now. I was listening to Stacy's show and heard Kevin were talking about. I guess they had read somewhere that SmartThings was using some kind of beta server for their back end. Yeah, like some beta infrastructure, and they were trying to get some clarification on that. So I'm hoping that Stacy can dig into that a little bit more and find out what the heck they were talking about. But if they're running,
that's interesting.
Yeah, I have my own theory on this.
Let's hear it.
So I think it's all those smart refrigerators that they sold after CES this year.
I'm sure, right.
It's causing a lag on the system, and they just don't know how to deal with it.
Flooded the market, yeah. Totally underestimated demand there, I'm sure.
Exactly.
But yeah, it does go back to that conversation, and really, we've been doing the HomeTech podcast here for a little over 2 years, and it's been a very interesting 2 years to be doing it, because really when we first started doing it, we saw all of this crazy momentum, and things just appeared to be happening so fast, and it was like we were on the precipice of that ever elusive mainstream smart home finally becoming a reality. And I'm certainly not implying that vision is not valid or that it's never going to happen, but I think what we've clearly seen from all of these big initiatives really is that it's tough. The smart home is very difficult, and these companies are clearly struggling to figure that out. I think Amazon is perhaps the one exception to that, and obviously they're taking a very different approach with really focusing on voice control and just coming at it from a very different angle. And so I think it's hard to make that sort of a direct comparison when you talk about the challenges, but still very interesting to see a lot of these big companies really struggling to figure the space out.
Yeah, and SmartThings was one. I mean, they're owned by Samsung. I mean, this is now a big company. This is one that I expected to do well. Their positioning, their marketing, the limited things that they were trying to do with the system, I really was hoping to see them do a little bit more with it. But unfortunately, they can't seem to get it together, and hopefully they will. I thought I saw a story, and I'm desperately searching for it as I talk, but I saw a story come through today saying that they had figured it out, or they were working on it. I could be wrong. There's been a lot flying back and forth news-wise. But man, I really hope they get it together, because I thought this would be a pretty cool system for most people. But so far it's been kind of off of our list since the end of last year when we were talking about it. And quite a few of our listeners reached out and said, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Well, let's move on here. We got more of a couple of real integrator-focused stories here that I think are relevant, though, for anybody who follows home technology. And that is, first, a big story that actually broke here just very recently, and that is the acquisition of Luxel by Legrand. And Legrand has been very busy, snapping up some companies and doing, I guess, what they do best, right?
Yeah. So now they have shades. So they just bought the shading company. I can't remember their name now.
QMotion.
QMotion, yeah.
Yep.
They have Vantage, Middle Atlantic, Nuvo, which is a pretty cool like distributed audio type system, kind of up there. I wouldn't say like directly competes with Sonos, but in the builder market, it definitely could. And now they have Wi-Fi. Like these guys seem to be on the move.
Yeah, they're covering all their bases. And first thing I thought, given the timing of this acquisition and the recent acquisition of PackEdge by Control4, Seth, I wanted to ask you if you were interested in starting a networking company.
Yeah, no kidding. I can. I'll get some Ubiquity equipment, and we'll just spray paint a different logo on it or something.
Yeah, right. OEM it. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the acquisition makes a lot of sense. Obviously, for Luxel, it's a huge win. I'm sure the dollar amounts weren't disclosed, but we can assume that they got an equitable deal and will benefit from the huge amount of resources that a big company like Legrand will bring to the table. And I'm a fan of Luxel. We use it in our business, and I think they make good products. I think they do a good job of supporting our industry and understanding what it is that home technology professionals and integrators really need out of their networking hardware. And so I commend them and congratulate them on the acquisition. And I think conversely, for Legrand, the acquisition makes sense. Like we talked about, they're getting their hands in a lot of the different, I guess, pieces or verticals, you could say, in a sense, of our market. As far as now the network, and they've got racks with Middle Atlantic and shades and lighting and all of these different bases covered. And so I think the acquisition makes sense from both sides. I hope that Luxel can maintain that really personal touch. I think the support that they offer is one of the big reasons that we enjoy using them, and as opposed to using a very large company where you're really just an anonymous user out in the sea of users. And I think having that personal touch from a company like Luxel to support you if and when things do go wrong is really important. So that's the one thing I'm going to be curious about as a Luxel integrator and user of their products, is if they can maintain that level of support and high touch that, in my opinion, has been very valuable.
Yeah, I went to a couple of Luxel trainings at CEDIA last year, or year before last, I guess, at this point. And yeah, they're very informative. Like they obviously know what they're talking about. Like you said, you pay a little bit more for the equipment than you would if you bought some other random, like I guess I'm gonna call it Ubiquity. Like you're not going to get service other than posting on a forums and hoping somebody comes across it in the next couple of days.
Right.
Like you actually can call, like as a dealer, you're having a problem. It's 5:00. You're ready to go home. You can call these people and they'll get you out of there. So yeah, I this all fits. I mean, we're talking Middle Atlantic, Legrand. This is all like luxury stuff. This is all Vantage, Middle Atlantic, QMotion. This is all super high end equipment. Even Nuvo would fall into that in some instances. So I think that I don't think Luxel is going to change how they're marketed or how they're pushed out to dealers. This is a total good move for Legrand. Legrand's such a huge company too. Like this is like probably pennies for them to pick this company up, but I think it's a great acquisition for them.
Yep. I agree. So we will see. Let's move on. We got one more story here before we jump into our interview with Joey of OneVision, and that is news out of the ASEAN conference, I guess, where it was discussed that some people believe we've got a recession coming, and I was surprised to hear that. I mean, things have just been seemingly so healthy here. I know in the Denver market we're booming, and obviously our economy by nature will boom and bust. And I have to say, I was surprised to hear this story, and I think you had some thoughts on it, Seth, that I'd be interested to hear shared with the audience.
Yeah, the end is near.
Hold on, buckle up.
Yep, the good times can only last so long, I guess. So
it's true.
This was an analyst looking into demographic data and how it correlates to U.S. economy. And basically, the gist of this story is that he's saying, okay, we're all selling to the baby boomers. We have been for a while. It's a big group of people, but they're all going away, and we all know that. The next generation that comes up is a very small generation. I think they called them Gen X, which is people born between 1965 and 79. And there's only 54 million people there. Following Gen X between 80 and 2000 is 84 million. That's the millennials, which is the largest group. And quite frankly, it's the children of the baby boomers, so it makes sense why they're larger. So Gen X is coming up. They're going to be reaching their spending potential, and it's just not going to be what the baby boomers have been propping us up. So that's his stick here. That's what he's saying. I don't know. I think our economy is such a dicey position anyway. I don't know if that's going to be it, but there's always these little peaks and recessions and bubbles and booms and busts and all that stuff. I mean, you go back and look, it happens every 9 or 10 years. We go up and down a little bit here and there. So it could happen, it probably will happen. I'm not going to call him wrong, but one thing that I looked at the story and was reading through, and he's like, his advice was to continue focus on baby boomers and catering to their aging needs and second homes. And to me, that is so backwards. Right now, to me, I guess it may just depend on the market that you're in, but I'm in one of the older markets. But to me, selling to and gearing your company up for millennials is really what the focus should be, because millennials have all of their baby boomers' parents' money, and they're going to spend it. They will spend it. Their baby boomers, one of their key things was that they saved money. The millennials supposedly do not save their money, but they spend it on things with value. So there's a ton of research out there about this, and it's very, very interesting to read through. I think some of the people in our industry are going to have a hard time transitioning from selling to, older people that wanted to show me how to do this, that kind of thing, to millennials who are just going to say, let me get my hands dirty. You're going to sell me something that's nice and with value, but I want to get my hands dirty. I think there's going to be some transitions there that are going to be hard to cope with for some people.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was, as you were talking, I was looking at this story again, and the name Tim Costello sounded familiar to me, and so I did a Google search, and I'm actually having trouble clicking the article open. It was a CE Pro article, and I thought I recognized the name. And Tim Costello gave a talk all about demographics out at the CE Pro Summit, which I attended. I guess it would have been last August, I believe, so August of 2015. The link appears to be broken. I'll try to find a link and send it to you, Seth, so we can get it up in the show notes. But I just think it was interesting because the gist of his talk at the CE Pro Summit was seemed very positive, and it was really focused on the millennials. And just the summary of the article that I'm seeing here in the Google search results does say that Tim Costello of BDX shows that the broad U.S. economy will boom from 2017 to 2030. And so I'm just curious because it seems like a decidedly different tone and message that we're getting, and it's the same guy who was speaking. And so I'm curious. I'll have to dig into that a little bit more and try to figure out what the discrepancy is there. But there's a famous saying, and I don't remember who said it, but demographics is destiny. And, it is true. We have different demographic patterns that really drive our economy, and not to get too macro here or get too far off topic, but it's important to be thinking about. as home technology professionals. So I agree. It is important. I, again, was surprised to see this story, and I'll see if I can find some time to dig in and find some more notes about the message that we were seeing out of the CE Pro Summit. But
cool. Yeah.
Seth, yeah. So I think without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our interview here again with Joey Kolchinsky. And again, Joey is joining us for a second time on the show. He's with OneVision Resources, and they've got an exciting new initiative aimed at the integration industry and really changing the way that we all think about and provide service to our clients. So let's get started.
Hey, Joey, welcome back to HomeTech.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, glad to have you back on. We've had a couple of reoccurring guests, and I think you're one of the first that is outside of the podcasting group. So we're really glad to have you back on. We had an interesting discussion with you last time about your company and how it was really revolved around the service side of the business. But I guess if somebody hasn't heard that show, I guess go ahead and just give them a background of who you are and what you've done here in the industry, and then we'll talk about what you've started up here.
Sure. So I'll give a brief history on who we were up until the beginning of this year. Starting several years ago, I was a one-man kind of IT service provider for high net worth families in the Boston area. And I always knew I wanted to scale beyond just me, and I knew kind of recurring revenue, taking a clue from the enterprise space, recurring revenue was critical to that. So recurring revenue was a key part of my business back then. And my clients started to ask me to do more than just IT. So I would start supporting their AV systems. And from there, they would ask me to build their smart home systems. So I eventually launched an entire integration firm within our company. And we had designers and engineers and programmers and project managers and built smart homes like every other integrator out there. But what was always critically different about us is that we were focused on recurring monthly revenue from the start. And so last year, we hit a fantastic point where we were bringing in about $100,000 a month in recurring revenue off of about 35 families, leading to about $3,000 a month in RMR from each family. And that certainly represents an extreme, but we were very interested in seeing how we could take that further and start to apply it across the rest of the market. So we made some really big changes.
And I think that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So you've basically taken your business model and your company model, it sounds like, and you're kind of opening up to everyone?
Yeah. I would say that well, our critical point when we got to that point where we sort of figured out that we were now able to get this recurring revenue, we asked ourselves, what was it that enabled it, right? Why was it that we were able to actually secure this kind of revenue? And we found that there were two things that we were delivering. It was instant triage, right? The act of picking up the phone or responding to the email 24/7, virtually instantly, and working with the client, and providing basic support, right? So we would help them, make an attempt at diagnosing the issue, help the client find a workaround if it wasn't fixable in the moment, and really try to attempt to address the lifestyle issue first and foremost, right? The act of getting back to what it is that they were doing, and we saved fixing the technology for later. And when we realized that those were the two things we did incredibly well, it really dawned on us then that was actually scalable across the industry, right? It's interesting. A few years ago, I had a local competitor who actually asked me if he could give me all of his clients and I would do service and he would do the smart home projects. And I didn't quite appreciate how it would work, so nothing really came of it. But he was much smarter than I, because he was the one who actually came up with the idea back then. It was only when we discovered that it was the triage and basic support that was really necessary, that's when we realized there was something to provide. So it's less of our business model. It's more about taking a huge responsibility off of integrators' shoulders and allowing them to provide an excellent level of service in order to then go and generate recurring monthly revenue.
Right. And so basically what you guys are doing essentially is taking a lot of those lessons that you learned and that infrastructure that you were able to put into place and opening that up and shifting to a B2B model. I'm curious, I want to jump in obviously and talk in greater detail about what that looks like, and that's what we're going to spend the bulk of our time doing. But quickly, before we get into that, is OneVision going to continue to offer services directly to existing clients, or are you guys exclusively now becoming a B2B outfit?
We are exclusively now becoming a B2B outfit. So we actually stopped marketing and selling to end users directly. And we are letting go of our current clients over time and are exclusively focusing on servicing other integrators and their customers.
Gotcha. Very good. So let's dive in here talking about servicing integrators and really they are becoming your customers. And let's talk about that as we get into it. Who are your target customers? Are there particular sizes of companies, or do you see this as kind of the industry across the board and really everyone could benefit?
Yeah, we put a lot of thought into that. You know, it was at the beginning we struggled with trying to find a way that would work for everybody, but we ended up figuring it out. And this is a service that applies to absolutely everybody. From the one-man service to the 50-person integration firm, we solve a critical problem and provide a valuable service that is whose cost actually scales with your needs. So, you know, for the smaller shops, it's affordable and it ends up scaling up as you become a larger shop and start building up recurring revenue, and your service team, your service channels start to incur more kind of incidents.
Right. Well, let's get specific here. I want to talk about a real world scenario. I think that'll really help people if they're happen to be struggling to really understand. Let's talk about a hypothetical scenario. Let's pretend that I'm an integrator using your service, and one of my clients, it's Thursday evening or Friday evening or whatever it is, and they're having a problem with their Apple TV, and so they pick up the phone to make a call, and they're obviously calling into OneVision. Walk me through what that process looks like and maybe what the different paths to resolution of that issue are.
Sure. So in order to go down that path, it's really important to understand the definitions of the three stages of any given service incident. The first stage is triage, which is asking the right questions, documenting the symptoms, and understanding the problem. The second stage is basic support, maybe attempting to provide a diagnosis, offering some simple fixes and workarounds, maybe rebooting some devices through rebootable outlets. And then the third stage, if necessary, if you haven't solved the problem by this point, is to maybe go do some, an on-site visit or some programming changes or replace a device. And what we do is we take care of the triage and basic support. Because after the basic support, that usually removes most of the urgency. I mean, of course, any kind of life safety issue will be an emergency all the way through to complete resolution. But most other issues, after you provide basic support, can then be scheduled and addressed later. So that's what we do for integrators. Any incoming call or email or IEG notification would come into, would notify us. We would start delivering instant triage and basic support services to that client. And then if necessary, we would then hand the incident over to our partner, the integrator, to provide advanced support. So we really remove the burden of having to be there 24/7, providing triage and basic support, and clue them into the issue after we've addressed the urgency.
Cool. As an integrator, I can tell you that takes up quite a bit of the day when you have clients calling in and you genuinely want to help resolve issues over the phone, because it's so much more time out of the day to sit behind a dash and drive an hour and a half to go to a client's house to reboot something. So tell me, you've touched on some AV things here. What types of devices and what types of services are you offering? I guess you obviously would touch computers too, right?
So we right now don't extend our services to IT. So we are simply layering on top of AV integrators and extending their services and simplifying the act of delivering their current services. We are actively looking into how we can eventually expand integrators' offerings to include IT, because we recognize that integrators are actually perfectly positioned to really be the go-to home technology manager in the future. And that's going to include things beyond AV. It's going to include the computer and the mobile device and things like that, the IT type things.
Okay.
So we absolutely want to provide those services, but at the moment, that's not something that we're offering.
So you're okay. So you're sticking mostly to the like home automation products,
exactly.
AV, that kind of thing.
It's the same stuff any integrator would deal with right now.
Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about pricing and how that would work. I'm an integrator. I'm interested.
Sure.
tell me how that would work. To me, from me to you, I guess, or to me to the client. How that would work.
So this is a cost that. So in order to make this service scalable across the board, we really have to split the pricing into two main components. The first component is incident volume. So the number of incidents that we are taking in on a monthly basis helps us calculate what one part of the fee needs to be. I really want to clarify that that's different from number of phone calls and emails. A single incident, let's say the Apple TV is not working in the living room, may involve 3 or 4 emails back and forth, or a phone call, or 2 or 3. That's fine. All of those things are bundled into a single incident. And so that's what we ultimately price on as our first variable. The next variable that we price on is monitoring. How many homes are we actually monitoring? And so we will we'll calculate a second part of the fee based on that. And ultimately, it's a fixed fee, adjusted quarterly, based on a 12-month average. And the idea here is to create something that was very hard to manage, to convert something that was very hard to manage into a kind of fixed operating cost at a fraction of what it would cost you to build up yourself if you hired up several smart home technicians and built a call center.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. I've seen this. We have similar pricing, I guess, with our wholesale security type accounts where you have a large price for a very small amount, and it gets lower and lower as you move on up in business with more and more clients.
Correct. The other interesting point here, and you mentioned about how does this relate to whether the client pays. So the reason why we separated the fees from incident volume to monitoring is that when you start monitoring a client, that's when you should start getting paid, right? So we really tied, the half of our fee was just for the call volume that we had to, that we need to cover our costs on. The other half of the fee is actually delayed until you start incurring recurring revenue, right? Once you start building up recurring revenue and you start activating monitoring on homes, that's when the second half of the fee kicks in. And that's how we were ultimately able to make this an affordable service for the smaller shops and have it grow with you as you grew.
Got it. And I don't want to dwell on pricing too long, but I do want to press it just a little bit to help people understand. Let's take like a typical, and I don't know what the averages are. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but let's take like a 5-person outfit that's been in business maybe for 10 or 15 years and has built up a client base. Can you just walk us through a hypothetical pricing model to get them started and then, explain how that sort of shifts over time?
So there's 2 main questions we ask. How many incidents are you getting every month? And the problem is that most companies actually don't know. It's one of the interesting facts I've discovered over the last few months is most companies actually don't have a clear understanding because support and service requests are coming into all different phone numbers and email address, and it's very hard to get a handle on exactly how many incidents the company is managing on a monthly basis. With that said, we trust the integrator effectively with whatever their gut check is or their gut number is to begin with. And we get started on that for the first quarter. Once we're up and running, we start to look back at the data and we can actually see how many incidents they're actually getting, and we start to adjust the fee based on the real number of incidents. The second question we always ask is how many homes are actually being monitored. So most integrators actually don't monitor any homes today, or monitor very few across their customer base. So it has a very small impact on the fee. All of this is a way to tell you that actually that 5-person shop that you just laid out there for me, we have seen them have a 5x difference in fees from one shop to the other because they just have completely different service profiles. We've seen retail integrators who have 10,000 customers in their database who get maybe 2 calls a day. And we have seen very, very high-end integrators with 50 homes in their database who get 5 calls a day. So it's completely different. It depends on the types of relationships and business that you've performed and developed over the last several years.
Yeah. Is it possible for me just to forward my cell phone directly to you?
Let's talk about that, actually. How is the phone call and email routing handled? Are integrators able to use their existing email addresses and service phone numbers if they have those set up, or does this require them to set up new sort of routing channels for their clients?
It definitely allows them to use their existing channels to the extent that they have them. Some of the integrators that we've taken on absolutely do have an existing email support channel and a phone support channel, whether it's a direct phone number or it's an extension on their phone tree. And we simply have that email and that phone number forward to us. And that's how we get started. So there are some integrators who do not have a support email address or a support phone number. They instead, their customers for years have just been calling different project managers or different, the text directly or whatever it might be. And with those integrators, we work with them to actually set up a dedicated support line and a dedicated support email address. And we start to, we actually work hand in hand with our partners to actually guide them into how you start to train your customers to call the dedicated line. And we went through this. I went through, personally, I had a problem with the first several years of my business. Since I was actually just a one-man shop, everything was coming to my cell phone and my email. And eventually, when we built up a team, I had to start getting clients who were using me for years to start using the support team. And we had this internal goal of making sure that the support team always responded faster than I would ever respond. And by doing that, the clients would very quickly start to use the support team over me. And it very quickly went away because they just realized, man, if I just go to the support team, I'm going to get the fastest response. So we work hand in hand with the integrator to help them train the client to start using the right support channels. But ultimately, everything just gets forwarded to us.
Gotcha. Well, that makes perfect sense. Let's go back here. We've talked a lot about the cost, but I do want to focus because this really, and you and I have talked before, it's not all about the cost. There's opportunity here, I think, as you see it, and I would agree with you. And so let's talk about that. I know that you see, when you look at an integration business, you see service as a potential profit center, and a lot of people don't look at it that way. And so talk about that, and let me know if are you guys planning to offer any tools to help integrators kind of make that shift to seeing service and implementing service as a profit center?
Absolutely. Yes, and yes. Because you're touching on some very key concepts that actually all build on one another to eventually get to a state of being able to earn recurring monthly revenue in a profitable manner. I think the first thing to understand is the hidden costs that exist, right? So there's the brand value hit that you take when you maybe don't respond to a customer instantly, right? And they have to wait. There's the time value of all the people in your organization who have to get involved, from your receptionist to the sales team to the project manager, when service incidents currently come into the company. But I think most importantly, there's the dollar value of not charging appropriately for both being available all the time and also meeting expectations with triage and basic support, but continuing to provide advanced support at no charge. Just about every company I've spoken to is sort of guilty, but in a good way, of both of those things, right? We all want to do wonderful things for our clients. You said it earlier, you want to be there for your clients, but it's hard to actually start to do that and charge for it appropriately. So I think that this leads us to the next idea of saying, break fix is really, really expensive. And it's because clients expect that, to us, this was a really critical component. Clients expect that simple little problems get quick, free solutions. And the problem with that is they think that all problems are simple little problems until it's not, right? So that's led to this idea that being able to respond on short notice and being there 24/7 for them sort of became this human right that they expected, right? It just sort of evolved into that with how technology has sort of infiltrated our lives. And so clients expect us to be able to respond on short notice, which means you need to maintain some reserved bandwidth. And this leads us to the next critical component. That leaves you with two choices. You can either book your team out, 100% of the time, and then cancel appointments when clients have, issues that require your instant response. Or you keep extra bandwidth on your service team so that you don't have to cancel any appointments and you can just assign a tech who's available to the service incident. The former actually irritates customers, and the latter is really expensive. So you're sort of stuck. It doesn't matter which way you go. And that was sort of a key discovery for us. And we really built this service to enable integrators to start making recurring monthly revenue, start building recurring monthly revenue by actually guaranteeing those concepts to our clients.
Interesting. It's definitely something that I've struggled with. Scheduling and having the operation side of it line up with all the stuff that happens during the week for service, and then all of the install stuff that's lined up to actually happen during the week. Something happens here in Florida. It's more than likely a lightning strike has taken out some equipment, and we've got to reroute guys around, and it's man, it sometimes it feels like we're just putting out one fire and watching another one pop up.
Totally. But it's like insurance, right? Like you are effectively providing insurance. You're telling them that even if they don't use you in any given month, when they do need you, you're going to be there.
Right.
And that's a really expensive thing to provide. So that's what we're focusing on, is to be able to work with integrators to help them start to sell recurring revenue by optimizing those concepts.
Very nice. I guess let's talk a little bit lower level here. Obviously, my integration company doesn't quite install things like Jason's integration company would. How would you work with the different nuances between each individual project? How do you work around those types of things?
So I think the best way to answer it's an excellent question, and a big focus for a lot of conversations in this space. And I think the best way to answer it is to actually take a slight step back from it. So is tech support, and this is going to sound so kind of out there, but is tech support really about tech? And I don't mean to get existential on you, right? But I think if we put ourselves in our customer's shoes, when they're calling for tech support, they're actually not calling to get their tech fixed. They're calling to get back to doing whatever it is that they were doing. So tech is about augmenting everyday life. And when it breaks, it gets in the way of those moments. And when support is needed, it's not for the tech. It's actually to get back to doing what they were doing. So if we translate this over to a situation before we talk about what you as integrators have to support, let's just go back to us in our personal lives. I remember when my grandmother was engaging in new technologies, and she would maybe call about Netflix after trying to do something on her own and install an Apple TV or something. So she wants to enjoy a movie. I don't know any of the specifics about grandma's setup. But of course I'm going to be helpful. She's my grandma. So I'm not going to get too technical. I'm going to help her find some workarounds. And next time I visit, I'm going to help grandma fix it. And none of that requires knowing the intimate details of any given system. So when a client calls and says, Apple TV is not working, we can ask them some initial questions. Well, okay, what do you see on the screen? Well, I see a black screen. My TV is not turning on. And we'll ask, okay, is the screen really off? Or maybe do you see like an HDMI input 2 error, message at the top right corner? Oh yeah, I see an HDMI input 2 message. Okay, so immediately as technical people, we now know the system is actually likely working. It's really probably a problem with the Apple TV or the HDMI cable from the Apple TV. So we ask the client to use the remote to maybe switch to their cable box. So they switch, and they tell us that works fine. So we ask them to turn the system off and switch it back to Apple TV. And they say the same thing happens. So now we know that this is likely a problem that can't be fixed. We can attempt to reboot it remotely, Maybe that'll fix it. Maybe it won't. But we're going to work with the customer now to actually help them maybe find that movie on demand and say, you know what, unfortunately, we can't fix this Apple TV right now. We'll have to schedule an on-site appointment to do it. But maybe I can help you find that movie or that TV show on demand. Let me know what you're looking for.
Interesting.
That's the critical component. It has nothing to do with knowing which wires are connected to what or what brands are using.
But I guess certainly you have some type of insight into what we as an integrator put in. You require some type of documentation or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some integrators who aren't able to give us anything. You have to imagine the retail integrator who has 10,000 customers from the last 20 years of doing work doesn't have much documentation on anything. Whereas the integrator that has 50 families from the last 5 years and they do very large but infrequent but very large projects, they have excellent documentation. So we will actually take a description on every system that's in the home if the integrator can provide it. And if they can't provide it on specific homes, we'll actually just get general descriptions of how they handle things. So the retail integrator might explain, we typically put in URC remotes, and our video systems are local video systems. And for music systems, we typically put in Sonos. And the other integrators might say, well, we use Savant exclusively, and most of our systems are distributed video. So there are ways to sort of paint a picture about any specific integrator and their customers.
Okay. I mean, I'm a programmer, so I can tell a lot from programming. Do you guys take the programming files too, just to kind of figure out, what is in the system and that kind of thing? Like, I can think of a Control4 system. It'd be very easy to kind of run through and diagnose if you had remote access.
It would, but that's ultimately that's not bleeding into advanced support that you should be able to go charge for. And ultimately, the customer is not looking for that to be addressed in the moment. Right? The customer doesn't need you to dive into Control4 and go fix some crazy complex programming issue. I mean, of course, there are those crazy situations that, yes, it is required. But most of the time, if they realize that it's not a quick, simple problem, they will actually acquiesce and say, okay, great, thanks for helping me find the workaround. Let me know when you guys can come out and take care of the rest. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what the customers are looking for.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I think a lot of this... it gets emotional. Typically, the problems that arise for us come up on we keep going back to the Friday evening, right? And that's everybody's had a tough week at work, and they're maybe sitting down to watch a movie with their kids, and something hiccups, and now all hell breaks loose. And so I think that just having a voice on the other end of the phone can kind of diffuse the situation, and I certainly see the value in that and agree with a number of your points there. Now, with all of that said, there obviously is some level of technical expertise involved in providing the type of support that we're discussing here. And I know you and I have talked about what you guys have there at your facility, the Tech Wall, which I think is really a very cool idea, and I'd love for you to tell our audience about that.
Sure. So our Tech Wall is a 12-foot wall that actually has working versions of almost every system that you can imagine in a home. So we have networks installed, we have distributed audio, we have multi-zones of audio, multiple zones of video. And for each of those zones, we actually have a Crestron touchscreen, Control4 touchscreen, Savant touchscreen, and then the corresponding remotes. We also have the 4 major lighting systems that are out there, from Crestron to Control4 to Lutron to Savant. We have access control systems. We built a door in the wall that actually lets us maintain and continuously test and train on access control systems, not just enterprise level ones, but also the off-the-shelf ones, like an August Bluetooth door lock. We've got camera systems and thermostats as well as in addition to shades. So we have virtually every system that you might install in a home across all the major brands, and we keep this maintained with the latest updates in order to be able to continuously train our team on what is actively out there in the field.
Right. Very, very cool. Love that. We've talked really about you providing that first tier support, and really what we've talked about has been reactive in nature, meaning simply that the client is sitting down and finding an issue and then picking up the phone, and you guys are right there to help, which is great. But I also want to talk about the proactive monitoring element, which is obviously a huge topic in our industry right now. And there are a number of different tools out there to do that. I know you guys are using IHEG. Tell me about that relationship and explain to me, is that a requirement? If I'm an integrator considering your services, is an IHEG implementation something that you guys require?
So IHEG is definitely a core part of our offering, but is not at all required for us to provide support. So IHEG is required right now only to do monitoring. So if you would like to monitor the homes and have us proactively address issues as they come up, which, by the way, is a fantastic way to charge recurring revenue. Once you're responding instantly 24/7, saying that you're going to monitor someone's home now allows you to start charging a monthly fee. But that is where we will require IHEG. Beyond that, we're able to do basic support and instant triage without IHEG. That if we go back to grandma with Netflix, I did not need IHEG in order to take care of grandma.
Interesting. Let's talk about how you take cases from integrators, like the ticketing system that you're using.
Sure.
Is it, and what an integrator who is using your services would expect when they run into that?
So one of the most critical parts to a healthy service operation is a strong ticketing system. A ticketing system is something that allows you to organize and aggregate all of your various service incidents into a single system that allows you to track them by status, by client, and make sure you're responding in a single aggregated view that everybody can now see. So we use Zendesk, and we actually create a new Zendesk implementation for every integrator. So part of this is not just about picking up the phone, but it's also working with you, the integrator, hand in hand to implement an excellent service operation within your company. So we will spin up a Zendesk system. We will optimize it for you. We will train your team on how to use it. We will manage it for you on an ongoing basis. And then through that system, we will receive all of your incidents. We will provide instant triage and basic support services. You'll be able to see everything that we're doing, and anything that that then needs your attention, we will then pass off to you, and you will then be notified that something requires your attention.
Very good. That makes sense. We're running tight on our time here, so I want to move to kind of wrapping this up. But before we do that, give us the quick overview. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about it because I know you guys at OneVision are also offering sort of pre-configuration services for devices like IHEG. I believe you're doing it for network and power management as well. Can you give us just the quick explanation of that service?
Yeah. The idea is that standardization makes support much, much easier. So if you are a partner of ours, we will happily configure your monitoring and power devices and send them to you pre-configured. That makes it much easier for us to then provide support and on an ongoing basis manage those devices. Got it.
That makes perfect sense. So like I said, we're running a little tight on our time. I think it's been a fascinating conversation. I really do think, obviously, what you guys are doing is a novel approach, and definitely wish you the best with it. I think it is something that the industry needs. Zooming back out to kind of wrap up the interview at the high level here, what do you really see as the biggest challenge, or maybe the biggest couple of challenges for OneVision to get some broad market penetration on this new service you're offering?
So glad you asked that question. The biggest challenge we come across is integrators who are overthinking their service plans. Service plans do not need to be complex, right? And the biggest thing that we need to start doing is helping you start to hit home runs with every client by responding instantly. And then we can roll out a service plan that they will be willing to pay for once you kind of build their loyalty through your awesome responsiveness. But, integrators who sort of consternate over the service plan development, we are there to help make that much, much easier, provide material for you. And if we can get an integrator to not worry about that, it makes things much, much easier.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. It feels like this is one of those things that happens in an industry that's finally feels like it's growing up. Like this feels like something that totally exists already in the IT world. Like if somebody, I'm sure some of our listeners have an IT background and they're listening to this going, yeah, this totally already exists for enterprise clients. it definitely feels like we're maturing here somehow.
Yeah, and I'll happily share a slide with you that maybe you can post on the website with the podcast. But we talk frequently about the idea that a lot of some integrators are an example of sort of the tail wagging the dog, where they're so focused on projects which are really difficult to kind of build a long-term value in the company, but where everyone wants to be is in creating, a profitable RMR side of the business. And so the focus really needs to be service. Projects are sort of this extra gravy that gets added on top. So that's another challenge that we run into is having there are a lot of integrators who sort of are already coming to us and saying, we get it, this is what we want to do, please help us get there. And agreed. I mean, those are fantastic signs that our industry is growing up.
Very cool. Very cool. I think you put it best on the last podcast we had you on, and I remember this to this day, that a project is something. Building a house is just a project. It's something that comes and goes, but having the customer there for life, that's what your real goal is. And
right.
I totally agree with that. So I wish you the best of luck. You've got me sold, but where can our listeners find out more? I guess we need to plug the website a little bit here.
Yeah, come to our website. We have a lot of information there, a detailed FAQ, and a really simple contact us form at the bottom. Let us know that you're interested, and we'll set up a one-on-one session where I can walk through all this with you.
Great, and it's OneVision.com, right?
OneVisionResources.com.
OneVision Resources. We'll make sure that we put a link to that in the show notes for you. Joey, I want to thank you again so much for coming on the show again and sharing this information with us. It sounds like an exciting opportunity, and I hope that some integrators hear this and say, that's what my business needs, and give you a call, because this is really, really something that is needed in our industry for sure.
We're really excited about it, and thank you for your support.
All right. Thanks, Joey. We'll let you go. Take care.
Take care.